4 separate things cracked open in this case this week. Pull any one of them loose, and the whole picture of that day on Horn Island moves. The FBI has said, for the first time, plainly on paper, what it's actually been doing in Mississippi. The one person standing with Nolan in his last confirmed minutes has finally spoken for herself. Not through a cousin, not a screenshot. She sat across a table from his mother and told her,
"Breaking news, y'all. This is a quick update on the Nolan Wells situation. See, they always say it's 2 sides to every story. Y'all remember this girl, Katie? The one who was supposedly, allegedly, last one seen with Nolan? So the friends had a story where she said she have her own story. Not only that though, y'all, the weirdest shit is that allegedly her cousin, Katie cousin, is on the run. He deactivated his whole social media. But why is that? Y'all seen the clip when Nolan was on some little boat called Lil Daddy. Now, allegedly, that boat is Katie's dad's. Mind you, remember Katie's parents said they never was on the island. They just swung by and picked her up. But everybody talking about, this her dad. This her dad. Now, it was reported on Lil Daddy's boat that it was an altercation at 5 o'clock. Even put out a statement saying that you pretty sure that one of the passengers that was on your boat that was in that group that was fighting. And that passenger, everybody saying was Nolan Wells. I just don't know what to believe now. Like, was it even a fight? Or you knew y'all did something to that boy on that boat? Was the dad and the cousin mad because she was fucking with a black guy? And they ain't like that? What are we going with? Is it Katie and her peoples that did something to Noah? Or was it the weak ass friends still? Or was it all of them covering it up? I don't know, y'all. What y'all think? I'm just giving y'all a little update on a little bit more evidence.
a string of GPS pings and recorded audio has been stitched together, laying out that boat's entire day, hour by hour, with nobody's memory involved. And someone tied to all of it has been threatened badly enough to make this a federal matter.
Bilge pump. She stated that her son, Warren, was interviewed by investigators and said he last saw Nolan.
One case, 4 moving pieces. Let's get into it. Quick thing before we get into it. Most of you come back for every update on this case and still haven't hit subscribe. I put real hours into separating what's confirmed from what's just noise, so you don't have to. That stays free either way. Hit subscribe so the algorithm doesn't leave me stranded. Then let's open the file. Before he was a case number, before a grand jury referral, before any of it, Nolan Xavier Wells was a kid from Ocean Springs, Mississippi, one of 6, a walk-on wide receiver at Southwest Mississippi Community College, number 16, due back for summer camp on Monday, July 6th. That deadline tells you what this trip actually was, not an open-ended blowout, a short, ordinary break before the season started again. His mother tells one story more than any other. In a math class, there was a special needs student. When the teacher asked a question, Nolan quietly got the whole class to put their hands down so she could answer on her own, without being rushed or overshadowed. When she got it right, he led the celebration, not as a performance, because he meant it. I always told Nolan, you have to be careful when you have a heart that big, Christine has said, because it's not always returned that way. All the best parts of me are with him. Hold on to that. Because everything that follows happened to that kid. For weeks, why the FBI was involved had only been answered in fragments. A line here, a comment there. This week, the Bureau's Jackson field office released a complete public statement. And the tone matters as much as the content. It says the FBI has assisted with certain aspects of the investigation, federal tools, partnerships that proved valuable, but that the Jackson County Sheriff's Office is leading, and will continue to lead, this investigation. This isn't a press release announcing a breakthrough. It reads like a reassurance, careful, measured, written specifically to lower the temperature around a question that had been feeding real anxiety for days, because 2 theories had filled that silence. One said federal involvement proved the case had been quietly escalated into something bigger. The other said the Bureau was there to manage the story, a cover-up in progress.
We do not want anyone to jump to conclusions. It's going to be very hurtful to the family if the wrong conclusions don't pan out.
Jackson County NAACP President Curly Clark says he wants to see less conjecture and more coming together.
It's sad, but I have to admit that race is a part of the equation. So we want to make sure that we're going to be very deliberate in the findings and ensure that the facts come out and that justice is served.
The statement supports neither. It confirms real, meaningful federal involvement. And it states plainly that Jackson County remains the lead agency, start to finish. It's support, not command. Hold on to that distinction every time this case comes up. Buried in that same statement is the actual reason federal resources got pulled in at all. The FBI says its efforts have focused on interstate threats, threats received by people connected to this matter. For a threat to become federal just by crossing state lines, someone in one state sends something threatening to someone in another. A message, a call, the internet, chief among them. Here's what's just as important. The statement does not say what those threats said, or who received them. Now, separate from the official statement, specific named people have described their own experiences. Nolan's friend Tricon Shepard says he and others have been getting threats online since the case went national. Jackson County Chancery Judge Ashley Cole, stepmother of one of the boys on the boat, has said publicly that her family has received a wave of death threats. That's more than a vague official line. Those are specific people describing specific experiences. Credible, because it's coming straight from the people it happened to. But the exact content of any one threat, beyond what they've chosen to share, hasn't been independently confirmed. And repeating graphic language just because it's circulating serves no one. There's more. In the middle of an active investigation into her own child's death, AI-generated fake videos of Christine herself have reportedly been circulating online. Fabricated footage of a grieving mother, built with AI, spreading while she plans her son's funeral. Ben Crump's line on this is simple. Nobody's life should be threatened in the pursuit of truth. Nobody should be presumed guilty before evidence exists. And there's a principle worth naming here. The temptation to fill every gap with the most dramatic version available is constant. But repeating unverified threats in full doesn't just risk being wrong. It compounds the exact harm those threats were meant to cause. Being careful isn't downplaying anything. It's refusing to become another link in the chain. Now, the development that changes the shape of this case more than anything else this week. Katie, the young woman Nolan spoke with in his final confirmed minutes on that beach. For weeks, everything attributed to her arrived through someone else, a family friend relaying it secondhand, her mother and sister posting to correct rumors that had spiraled. This week, she sat down face to face with Nolan's own mother. And according to Christine, what Katie told her does not match the story she's been hearing from everyone else. But here's the detail that matters most, and it's more limited than the internet made it. Katie and Nolan met that day, spent time together, parted ways. She got back on a boat with her own friends, and she assumed, based on their conversation, that Nolan was heading back to rejoin his group. She never saw him get on that boat. That distinction is everything. Katie's account isn't a clean eyewitness contradiction, her seeing one thing while the friends claim another. It's this. Nolan told her his intention. Whether he actually followed through, before whatever happened next, is something nobody, not Katie, not the friends, not the family, can currently confirm firsthand. A clean contradiction makes a better story. That's not what this is. And it reframes the real question. If Katie's account is accurate, the mystery isn't whether Nolan wanted to leave. It's what happened in the gap between him saying so and whatever came after. That gap is where this whole case still lives.
Immediately, Stacey Turner, without investigation, said, yeah, he drowned. The family didn't agree, right? But Stacey Turner refused to do an autopsy. She's the medical examiner. She's just like, no, he drowned, right? That's one. Then you had Trey Reed, who was found hung on a campus, on a Delta State college campus. Stacey Turner said, yeah, that was suicide. The family went and got a different investigation, and they found that he had bruises all over his body, so they ruled it a homicide because of the blunt force trauma that he suffered. They said, no, this wasn't a suicide. He was beaten and hung. But Stacey Turner had said, no, that was suicide. Stacey Turner also said when Damian Cameron got into it with the law enforcement and then later died from internal bleeding in his neck, when he went to the autopsy, she was like, yeah, she couldn't determine how he died. He died from internal bleeding of his neck, but she couldn't determine the cause of death. And isn't that what you're here for? You're the medical examiner, right? and now Nolan Wells. Immediately, before any real investigation, she's like, oh yeah, he drowned. That was the story that was being pushed, right? So what we're saying is, every time a black person dies at the hands of allegedly white people, or white people are suspected of something, because let's be honest, a lot of suspicious things have happened. Stacey Turner can't find a reason or crime has been committed. So that's why the family had to go outside of Mississippi to get an independent autopsy.
So let's do what this case badly needed. A reconstruction of July 4th that doesn't rely on anyone's memory of a chaotic afternoon. According to GPS records from the Mississippi Department of Marine Resources, the boat left its dock at 9:56 a.m. It reached Horn Island at 11:14. An ordinary holiday morning, not a single question in either timestamp. The last confirmed sighting of Nolan alive puts him on the island around 3 p.m. And at roughly that same hour, according to dispatch audio obtained through a public records request, someone on that boat called for towing assistance. The bilge pump had failed. The boat was taking on water. This matters more than it sounds.
Secret Service Sam here with an official Nolan Xavier Wells timeline of this case so far. 9:56 a.m. the boat leaves its original departure dock. 11:14 a.m. the boat arrives at Horn Island. 4:31 p.m. the boat leaves Horn Island and returns to the original departure dock. 5:52 p.m. the boat travels into Fort Bayou. 6:06 p.m. the boat returns to the dock. 7:19 p.m. the boat travels to the Fort Bayou boat launch, from where it was presumably towed by a vehicle to a private residence. Judge Ashley Cole stated that the group departed Horn Island around 4:30 p.m. because the vessel was taking on water due to a malfunctioning bilge pump. She stated that her son, Warren, was interviewed by investigators and said he last saw Nolan at 3 p.m. and of course they left at 4:30 p.m. Now, here is the complete timeline of all the events. July 3rd, 2026, Nolan Wells stayed over at a friend's house. July 4th, 2026, early morning, Nolan and his friends headed to the island for the holiday. July 4th, 2026, early afternoon, a friend stated they spoke to Nolan, who said he was leaving around 2 to 2:30 p.m. July 4th, 2026, at 4 p.m., a video of Nolan saying, "Give me my effing phone," was recorded. July 4th, 2026, afternoon, female Katie stated she saw Nolan last with his friends. July 4th, 2026, around 4:30 p.m., according to Warren's stepmom and the GPS, the friends left the island at 4:30 p.m. without Nolan. July 4th, 2026, at 11 p.m., the friends reported Nolan missing to his mom. However, they had his phone. Nolan's mom tracked his phone to Warren's location. They had his phone almost 7 hours before reporting it. July 4th, 2026, late night, Nolan's father went to Warren's home, where they lied and stated they didn't have his keys. July 4th, 2026, late night, a female on the phone with Nolan's friend stated they had a pool party after leaving the island and Nolan's keys were on an Xbox. July 4th, 2026, late night, Nolan's father retrieved his keys from Warren's home with police assistance. July 5th, 2026, at 2:53 a.m. After Nolan was reported missing, user EvanNoel4 posted a photo on Instagram at 2:53 a.m. on July 5th, 2026, but has since deleted it. A screenshot at 10:53 p.m. shows that EvanNoel4 posted the photo on July 5th, 2026 at 2:53 a.m., but then deleted it. July 5th, 2026, the boys lawyered up. July 6th, 2026, Nolan was recovered. This is why it's sus. Because why would you guys lawyer up? Why would you not give the phone over? Why would you not hand the keys over unless you had something to hide? We need justice for Nolan Xavier Wells. Secret Service Sam out Sampson for president.
For nearly 2 weeks, the reason the group left rested almost entirely on one public source, Judge Ashley Cole, whose son was on the boat. She said they left around 4:30 because of the mechanical failure, that her son last saw Nolan around 3, and that Nolan chose to stay behind to catch a later ride. When she posted that, none of it could be verified. It was one mother's account, secondhand. Now some of it holds. The dispatch call was recorded in real time, hours before anyone on Earth knew Nolan would go missing. Nobody invents a boat emergency in advance of a disappearance that hasn't happened yet. That part of the account is real, and an honest accounting has to say so. the GPS agrees from a different angle. The boat left Horn Island at 4:31, almost to the minute. It returned to the dock around 5:44. So here's what's confirmed. A genuine, documented mechanical failure. A departure without Nolan at 4:31. A return a little over an hour later. Not confirmed. Why Nolan wasn't aboard. Whether he stayed by his own choice, or whether it was more complicated. And what actually happened on that beach in the roughly 90 minutes between the 3 p.m. distress call and the 4:31 departure. Nobody, on any side of this case, has publicly walked through that 90-minute window in detail. And in a real sense, that's where this entire investigation still lives. Then there's the phone. And this part doesn't depend on anyone's memory. When Nolan was reported missing, his phone wasn't with him. It surfaced with one of his friends. Christine says she and her sister tracked it themselves, to a friend's home. When they got into it, both of Nolan's Snapchat accounts were empty. No saved photos, no videos. Even though he reliably documented gatherings like this, and even inside the app's normal 24-hour window. Some texts appeared missing too. None of that, on its own, proves tampering. People clear phones for all kinds of reasons, and deleted data isn't automatically gone. Forensic extraction can recover it, and carrier records exist independently of the device. Which brings us to the most circulated piece of evidence in this entire case, a short video panning across the water, with a voice demanding a phone back. Something close to, "Give me my phone, what are you doing?" Early on, Crump's team believed that voice was Nolan's. The internet treated it as confirmed fact within hours. It's since been disputed. A friend, Traken Shepard, came forward to ABC News and said the voice is his own, from a separate altercation, and that Nolan isn't even in the footage. Pressed on it later, Crump was noticeably more careful. The original claim came from one witness, he said. Another has since disputed it. His team now has audio experts working to determine whose voice it actually is. And, this part is a real correction on the record. Going forward, his team would frame single witness claims as claims. This is what a witness told us, not confirmed fact. If you still see that original clip online as settled truth, remember that walkback happened. On July 15th, Nolan's parents met the Jackson County District Attorney for the first time since his body was recovered. Two concrete things came out of it. The phone will get a joint, simultaneous inspection, the family's forensic experts and law enforcement's, examining the device together, at the same time, seeing the same data pulled the same way. So neither side can later dispute how the other's process was handled. Analysts have called that unusual, the kind of thing that doesn't happen without sustained public and legal pressure. And once the sheriff's office finishes, the case goes to a grand jury. Be careful with that phrase. A grand jury referral for an unnatural or suspicious death is standard procedure in Jackson County. It does not by itself mean charges are coming. The DA's office has said directly that authorities have not indicated this is being treated as a criminal investigation. A grand jury is a panel of citizens who review what prosecutors present and decide whether there's enough to move forward. It's not a trial, no defense. Former Judge Carlos Moore has warned that a referral alone isn't progress, pointing to this same office failing to indict in a past case. Another attorney, Tyler Bailey, calls it ordinary process for any suspicious death. Both can be true at once. The real test isn't the referral. It's what happens once a grand jury actually sees the evidence. And all of it, every theory, every timeline, every deleted file, sits on top of one thing that still doesn't exist. A confirmed cause of death. 2 autopsies. The state's, at the Mississippi Medical Examiner's Office, still waiting on toxicology. The independent one in Washington, funded in part by Colin Kaepernick, still not released either. 2 labs, 1,000 miles apart. Neither has given this family an answer. Until one of them does, everything else is sitting on an incomplete medical record. So here's the honest ledger. Tonight. Confirmed. The boat's full documented movement. A real mechanical failure. A 4:31 departure without Nolan. A joint phone inspection agreed to by both sides. The FBI's limited supporting role. Katie's account, an assumption, not an eyewitness claim. Still open, why Nolan wasn't aboard. What happened in that 90-minute window? Whose voice is on the video? What was deleted from the phone? And what both autopsies will ultimately conclude. No cause of death has been confirmed. No suspect has been named. No charges have been filed against anyone in connection with Nolan's death. His parents are still waking up to the same question, not as an accusation aimed at any one person, but as the plain, unbearable question any parent in their place would ask. What happened to my son? When the toxicology comes back, when the autopsies are released, when the grand jury actually convenes, that's when this case moves. Not before, and not based on whatever spreads fastest online in the meantime. We'll bring you that the moment there's something real, sourced, and confirmed, not a moment before. Nolan Wells was 18 years old, remembered by teammates as the guy who celebrated other people's wins as loud as his own, by teachers as the kid who made sure nobody in the room felt overlooked, and by his own parents as a light they are still, weeks later, trying to find a way to talk about in the past tense. If this gave you a clearer picture of where this case actually stands, subscribe, so you're here for whatever comes next. I'll talk to you soon.